Good afternoon. My name is Mike Haney, and welcome to this special edition of 60 Minutes in Black America as we cover the Maryland state elections. We'll be right back. Hey, good afternoon. My name is Mike Haney, and we're picking up right where we left off last night at about 11:30, covering the elections. Last night, we made certain calls in the state of Maryland, which we believe is going to go down as one of the more important elections in this state, but moreover in this country. We've got some projections that we're going to make today, but let's go over what we did last night. We talked about many of the state elections. What really was not really surprising to us, because we actually made this prediction last week. Dan Cox, who now today everyone wants to know who Dan Cox is. We projected Dan Cox the winner of the Republican gubernatorial race yesterday, and Dan Cox won. You know, when you look at the data, Dan Cox won in just about every one of the 24 counties in Baltimore City for the Republican Party. And what's of more interest is the interest that has been generated by his win. Larry Hogan was out tweeting today, and a statement from Larry Hogan, he says, Trump lost, Republicans the White House, the House, and the Senate. He selfishly colluded with national Democrats to cost us a governor's seat in Maryland, where I ran 45 points ahead of him. So congratulations to Dan Cox, who has stirred the pot. And if you ask me, don't count Dan out. Don't count any politician out, because we just never know. One of the interesting things that I believe that pushed Dan Cox over the edge to win was the number of undecided voters, or were they really undecided, or they just decided because Dan Cox was Trump endorsed that they weren't going to let people know which way that they voted. And anyway, the strategy that Dan employed across the state, with probably $800,000 less than his primary opponent, Kelly Schultz, was astounding. To win every county in the state, Dan Cox, we projected ahead of Associated Press, him to be the winner, and he was. Another race that was watched closely was the Attorney General race between Anthony Brown and the wife of his former governor. Anthony Brown, if you recall, used to be the lieutenant governor in Maryland, ran for governor, lost the primary of the governor's race in 2014 to then Ben Jealous, and then subsequently went on to become the congressional representative from Prince George's County. Well, anyway, Anthony abandoned the seat as the representative to Congress from Prince George's County to run for the state's attorney general seat in Maryland, and he went up against former Governor Martin O'Malley's wife, Katie O'Malley. And we predicted last night around 10:30 Anthony Brown to be the winner at that race. And when we do these projections, we crunch numbers. The production team, who will meet before this cast is over, and not all of them are here because some of them had the common sense to go get some sleep. Much of us have been up working the night, crunching numbers, looking at trends to make these predictions. You know, we looked at the trend of polling votes, we looked at the trend of early voting, and when we looked at it, even though we know that in Maryland, we have almost 500,000 mail-in ballots to win, we have projected Anthony Brown over Katie O'Malley. Anthony Brown wins that race, and guess what? The AP agrees with us. Well, we agree with the AP because really we were the ones that made that announcement first. And then we go to the controller race in Baltimore, and controller race for the state, and that was Brook Lierman versus Tim Adams, the mayor of Bowie. Tim Adams, the mayor of Booley, and his Let's Roll campaign versus Brook Lierman and her calm and comfort around, people of color endorsing her race. Brook Lierman, a delegate out of Baltimore. We projected last night that Brook Lierman would win that race. And guess what? After we projected that, the Associated Press agreed with us that Brook Lierman, clear winner, ran very well, particularly in Montgomery County, Prince George's County. We know that there's votes to count with the mail-ins, but based on the trends of the early voting and the polling locations around the state, we don't see that trend changing, and we continue to say that Brook Lierman has run that race, and she will face a Republican candidate for the Comptroller's position in November. We also looked at the state's attorney's race for Baltimore City, which has been a hot button topic around the country. Marilyn Mosby, Thiru Vigaraja, and Ivan Bates ran in the Democratic primary to face off on someone, Roya Hanna, who decided to back out in the spring to run as an independent. So that race had Ivan Bates up about 4,000 votes, about 13 percentage points. And when we looked at the early voting, which Ivan did very well, Maryland did okay. They seem to be sort of a dead heat at the polling place. But based on the trend that we saw, we made that call, calling Ivan Bates the winner of the state's attorney's race in Baltimore. Ivan Bates, the winner of the state's attorney race in Baltimore. We made that call, and now Ivan will go up against Roya Hanna. And it looked like to us when we looked at it and talked to people as they exited polls in Baltimore, that people seem to see Ivan as a default candidate. Thiru Vigaraja, who was backed heavily even by our Republican governor. Okay, so that's 0-2 for our Republican governor, Kelly Schultz, Thiru Vigaraja, 0-2 for our Republican governor. That people saw some issues with integrity, with credibility, to a point where people saw Ivan as the better choice of the three, not understanding where Attorney Mosby may be after her trial. So Ivan Bates again, we predicted, we're sticking to it, will be the representative for the Democratic Party facing independent candidate Roya Hanna in November. We also went to Prince George's County and looked at the seat that was occupied by Anthony Brown, who won that seat when Donna Edwards decided to run for the Senate seat that Chris Van Hollen subsequently beat her in. She decided to go back and run for her seat again against the former prosecutor for Prince George's County, Glen Ivey. Well, Glen Ivey ran an unbelievable campaign, bit of controversy on both of their sides with the outside money, outside influence that they both garnered for that seat. But we projected last night, and the numbers seem to hold, with 100% of the precincts, the in-poll precincts, being reported in Prince George's County. And understanding, again, and I continue to say this, we understand that there is a significant amount of mail-in votes to be counted. In the populace of the state of Maryland, if you look at Baltimore City, there's only 22 or 23,000 Democratic votes to be counted there. Prince George's County, a somewhat similar number, but in the aggregate, there's over 400,000. It's not like there's 400,000 in Prince George's County. So when you look at the early voting numbers and you look at the in-person number, the early voting numbers at the poll, the polling numbers from yesterday, it seems to be an insurmountable lead if you give them the same percentages as what the numbers we were crunching that they were getting and trending early voting at the poll yesterday, give them that same number. You can even pull Glen Ivey dead even to what Donna Edwards did, and she still would have a difficult time beating him with counting ballots or counting the mail-in ballots. So Glen Ivey, congratulations from BlackUSA.News and 60 Minutes of Black America. Look forward to seeing and hopefully speaking to you as you march on to the November election. So those were the ones that we projected last night. And those are who we're saying the winner. And I have to continually say to you, that AP Baltimore Sun followed BlackUSA.News and 60 Minutes in Black America to the predictions that we made in those races. And someone is asking, will what more win? What is your call on that race? Hey, that's why this is breaking news, because we are going to call that race today. And we have spent an insurmountable time crunching numbers, looking at the polling locations, looking at the various counties to make a comprehensive decision. And I want to say to those out there that support BlackUSA.News and support 60 Minutes in Black America, that being able to come to a network like this, because we know in communities of color, it's important that there's a communication vehicle and we don't have to go where we may not normally go, CNN, NBC, ABC, Fox 45, to get news and to get results that, we spend the same time and we use some of the same methodology to get to and make these predictions. But why should we have to wait 2 or 3 days? When we see a consensus of the voters in various jurisdictions and in the counties, in terms of what the trends are, we're going to make the call. So we're going to go out on the limb today and we're going to make the call in some key races in Baltimore County, Baltimore City, and finally, we're going to call the governor's race. So just hang in there. You're going to hear from BlackUSA.News, 60 Minutes in Black America, what our call is on the race for governor. And the significance of this governor's race in Maryland is that it gives us an opportunity in this country to have the third elected governor in the history of this country. Westmore gives us a chance to go up against Dan Cox and Wes Moore if he's ultimately our determinant as far as who has won the primary for the Democratic Party. Gives us a chance to look at that. It gave us a chance with Anthony Brown to have a Black attorney general, and with Katie O'Malley, a female attorney general. So this election gives us an opportunity to look at some first. But is it Wes or is it Perez? Because Perez performed very, very well, surprisingly well. The disappointing news probably to the Francho camp is that, they didn't perform as well as they expected to. And then you look at a dropout. The guy that dropped out, Rashawn Baker, man, surprisingly, he performed pretty well. The unfortunate part is that Rashawn Baker, who possibly could have made a difference in the Moore camp and in the Perez camp, had he been able to support either one, because that's what we'll tell you right now, that it's down between Perez and Moore unbelievably in terms of where it is that we're going to project the winner. But Rashawn Baker, who did pretty well, in terms of vote, a lot of people voted and supported Rashawn Baker, and not just in Prince George's County where he's from. He got a number of votes given the fact that he suspended his campaign back in June. And, someone may say at the end of the day, man, I'm sure wish we had been able to get Rashawn Baker's endorsement, because it sure would have helped, because he has a voice in this state, and hopefully whoever the eventual winner is recognizes that. But let's go to States Attorney's race in Baltimore County first with a projection. So the Baltimore County State's Attorney's race, and we have to understand as a people the significance of states, attorneys, prosecutors, be it in Baltimore City, be it in St. Louis, Missouri, be it in San Francisco, where they recalled their state's attorney, in terms of how we prosecute our people, how we go at looking at the issues we have with policing and holding police accountable for behavior that is unjust to a community. And so state's attorneys are very critical and important position in Baltimore County. They have one that had been in office, I want to say at least 16 years, a guy named Schellenberger. Scott Schellenberger was in position as the incumbent state's attorney. A guy named Leonard ran against him. And right now, Leonard is ahead of Schellenberger by 860 votes. And what we looked at the early voting patterns in which Leonard absolutely polled Schellenberger in early voting. At the polls, Leonard also was ahead at the polls. So when you look at the slim 1.5 point lead, does it make sense to make a projection when you have almost 20,000, 22,000 outstanding mail-in votes to count? Well, when we looked at the trends and we delved in some of the precincts and where some of the votes at the location happened for Schellenberg and happened for Leonard, we looked at early voting as what may have made a difference. And Leonard did very well, believing that those early voters are similar to what the mail-in voters may be. And so we're going to project for Baltimore County a new day with a new prosecutor, and we're projecting Leonard as the Democratic winner of the state's attorney's race in Baltimore County, upsetting an incumbent that had been in office for a number of years. So in Baltimore County, we're projecting Leonard, Attorney Leonard, as the winner in that state's attorney's race. And so let's stay in Baltimore County and let's go to another controversial election, and that's of the state Senate race in Baltimore County, where Dolores Kelly, who had been in that seat for, God knows, maybe 30 years, decided that she wasn't going to run. Ben Brooks, former Delegate Ben Brooks, and Delegate Jay Gillese went head to head for that seat. Controversy around Jay Gillese, who was somewhat censored by the legislature for his outlandish treatment of his staff and of some other personal conduct issues, ran a pretty decent race in spite of that. And maybe because it was that people didn't understand the issues or hadn't heard of it, because integrity is everything when it comes to a political candidate, or at least it should be. So right now, Ben Brooks holds 1,000 vote lead, or close to 1,000 vote lead, with all the precincts reporting in that part of the county. And we are projecting Benjamin Brooks as a representative from the Democratic Party to face off in November. Jay Gillese is out. Jay Gillese has been defeated. We're projecting Jay Gillese as the loser in the county for the state Senate seat to replace Dolores Kelly. So from BlackUSA.News and 60 Minutes in Black American, congratulations, Ben Brooks, and good luck in the upcoming general election. So let's go to the Baltimore City Sheriff's race, where we have another guy that's been in office, I think, since 1990 something. When you say 90 something, we've got a generation of kids that weren't born then. John Anderson, good guy. As what happens when you're in office a long time, things happen. People talk about things that happen. His wife continued to get a salary being on leave, and there's friends and family that he hired. Well, that happens, but I think people generally had a good feeling about Anderson until recently, some eviction, and we all know what happened during the pandemic, people being evicted from homes that Anderson wasn't sensitive to, in addition to the fact there were issues with the fact that the sheriff's department wasn't brought into the 21st century. So up comes Cogan, one of his former assistant sheriffs that ran against him. And right now, Cogan is up 300 votes in a race that no one thought would be this close, or no one thought Anderson would lose, or no one thought that Cogan could win. And based on the fact that Cogan performed very well, Sheriff Cogan performed very well, or former Sheriff Cogan performed very well in early voting. He was beating John Anderson in the polls yesterday, in-person voting yesterday, and based on the fact that there are only 22,000 mail-in votes to count in Baltimore City, and the sentiment trend of a new day, we are projecting Sheriff Cogan, and I don't believe they're opposed in the general election by any Republican candidate. We're projecting Cogan the winner of the sheriff's race in Baltimore City. So blackusa.news, 60 Minutes in Black America are projecting a new day in Baltimore City for the race of sheriff. So let's go to the clerk of court for Baltimore City. We have Lenora Dawson and Xavier Conaway of the Conaway family. There's a Conaway in the Recorder of Deeds office. Frank Conaway was an institution as it relates to politics in Baltimore. There's a Conaway as a delegate in, I believe, the 40th district or 41st district. There's a Conaway, and here's another Conaway, Xavier. And, you know, Lenora Dawson was highly endorsed by everyone, but that Conaway name is powerful. And right now, Xavier Conaway is up in a very tight race, 1,000 votes, and that is not going to be overcome. Xavier Conaway, we are projecting in Baltimore City that the Conaway legacy continues in another position. So that's 3 that they have a hold on: Recorder of Deeds, delegate, and now we're projecting the winner, clerk of court, Baltimore City, Xavier Conaway, to face off in November in the general election. So before we get to the big one, before we get to the gubernatorial race, we all know the importance of education in this state, and many of the gubernatorial candidates, even to the Comptroller candidates and the Attorney General candidates, everyone talked about education, the blueprint for Maryland relative to education, how to fund it, how to implement it. When you realize Prince George's County, Baltimore City, Dorchester County, the atrocious education numbers that we are seeing out of those counties and Baltimore City, that Baltimore City, for the first time, it isn't even over 100 years, it's the first time, had the ability to elect, has the ability, because this was a primary and the final decision maker will be in the general election, has a opportunity to elect 2 elected members of the school board in Baltimore City to begin to change the dynamics of community input and just rollover that Baltimore residents seem to imply when it comes to decision on the school board. So that race wasn't not close either. And so we're looking at the top 5 candidates of that race: Bay, Giacini, Esposito, Curley. Esposito is running away at 14,000 votes. Curley around 11,000 votes. Kenyatta Bay has 11,000 votes as well. And so those 3, Esposito, Curley, Bay, those are the 3. 4 from that race go to the general election. And right now we have a dogfight between Jacina and Michael Johnson, who we're going to hear from later. And right now, Michael Johnson is up by 295 votes with 22,000 mail-in votes to be counted. And what percentage of that vote goes, and is it apportioned based on the percentages that you see? Well, one of the things that made us go in and look at this race, when you look at Michael Johnson, who right now sits in the fourth position to move on, was the fact that Johnson polled early voting significantly well. Matter of fact, he polled second to Esposito in early voting. And when we go and look at the correlation between the early voting and the mail-in ballots and the profile of people that early vote and the profile of people that mail-in ballot, we said, well, there's some similarities to here, and we're going to make that call. So we're going to call it that in the final four, we're going to call Johnson the victor by either very, very slim margin, if the mathematics to the percentages statistically hold up, or to what he got in terms of second place in the early voting, and he gets similar in the mail-in. He could move as high as third place, we're projecting. But we're predicting that Johnson will win, and the four candidates moving forward to the general election in November for the top two spots for the Baltimore City School Board are Bay, Johnson, Esposito, and Curley. And we've asked Johnson to come into the studio, and I think he's here, and we're going to talk to him. We're going to talk to Johnson about that. And Mike, thank you so much, man. And I know it was a hard-fought campaign, and we want to hear your perspective on your campaign.
Well, thank you, Michael. And I'm wearing headphones because there's some work being done, and this would you won't be able to hear all of the noise. It was 8 people. It was unfortunate that I think the election board didn't deem it necessary to move it to the front. You had to find us at the last page. I mean, literally at the last page, and we had to educate folks at the poll, literally, that this election was going on. So it's not as though the 8 of us did not do our due diligence. It's just that it didn't seem like that the system really wanted this to become an important election, which it is, because as we spoke with everybody, people were like so surprised that this was even going on, and they knew how important it was. So we had to literally tell people, we're going to be on the last page, look for our name, whoever it was that was campaigning. And so we had to do education. But it was, I mean, right now I'm 295, but that can change. And I appreciate that the idea that I would win from 60 Minutes in Black America, but it's going to be interesting to see.
I think where we're going with this is that you're right. We projected you a winner after doing some mathematical stuff. And what I'd like to talk with you about is maybe there should have been 8 candidates on the list as elected, versus you have a school board of how many people in Baltimore City?
9, actually 10. I'm sorry.
So you have 10 people, including, I think this appointed student makes 11, and you get
actually it's 9. The appointed student makes 10.
Okay, yeah. So you get two elected seats this time, and this was legislated, I think, 4 or 5 years ago to happen. So here we are with 2 elected seats. You're in a dogfight apparently, because even at number 4 with 2 elected seats, based on the numbers that we crunched all night long, we kind of look a bit ahead in terms of, okay, so you got these 4, you got this guy that either eked by or hits up in the third, okay, and it's a pick 2 strategy. What is your strategy going into November? What is your strategy to go from 4th or 3rd to one of the top 2?
Well, I think we're going to continue on our description of what's going on in Baltimore City Public Schools. We're still going to talk about the problems. We're going to talk about the lack of, even though we have money literally almost pouring out of the pockets, and people continuing to say, well, we didn't have money then, but we got money now, and what are you doing with it? I think that I will be speaking for the community. I'm the community's choice. A lot of, there's some people that's in this race are there because the system would like to have them come in. But I think that the community needs a disruptor. I think the community needs someone to ask the right question and to be able to get the right answers. But I think the community has to be able to push me forward as we move towards November the 8th, because it's going to be a lot of things going on now that, or at least within the next 48 hours, when it's set who the four are, we will be going very aggressive to explain to the community what it is, what we need to do, and how we need to get there.
So Michael, Eugene Johnson, you mentioned what the community needs and what the community wants, and we know in our gubernatorial candidates, because right after you, we're going to make the announcement of the projection that we have as the winner of the gubernatorial race here in the state of Maryland. All of our governor candidates made education a priority, be it Wes Moore, Peter Franchot, Joe King, the former Secretary of Education for the country, because we know that we are in some perilous times, particularly Baltimore City. So does the superintendent in Baltimore City need to change?
Yeah. I think that we need to change in the superintendent. If we're going to come in with fresh ideas, if we're going to come in with activism from the community, if we're going to come in listening to the community, then we begin with the head. You have to blow up this system. We can't keep running the 1950 school system and all we're graduating is first round drafts for Amazon and Walmart. That's where most of our employees. Case in point, the largest freshman class at Morgan State University's history does not include the largest group of coming out of Baltimore. Baltimore used to dictate the size of the classes at Morgan University. Now we're backed up. So your question of should the superintendent or the leader of the school system have to walk out? Yeah, it's time to go. We don't. I don't think the community has confidence in her anymore. So let's go find someone else, and let's let the community have an opportunity to interview that person to make sure we pick the right one, because this is about our children. And if you don't love the children, you're just hanging around.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I appreciate you being here. Let me, before I ask you one final question, I let you go. Let me remind the viewers, please post your comment in the tracks. Please post your comment in the chat. If you have any questions, please ask your questions. Interested to hear what you feel as we get ready to make this big announcement in terms of who we are projecting as the gubernatorial, Democratic gubernatorial representative for the state of Maryland for the Democratic Party, what you guys are thinking, But, Mike, education, as you said, is very important in the state of Maryland, right? Education is very important here in the state of Maryland, and you are an education advocate. So did we lose Michael? We lost Michael? Okay, well, that's okay. And the question I have for Michael Johnson, we're projecting a very, 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 very tight race, and I think he's coming back in. We're projecting a very, very, very tight race. Mike, so the final question, The final question I have for you, Mike, we're projecting a very, very tight race. So if your race is within the percentage points that allows for a free recount, right? Meaning that you win or you lose by 10 votes or 5 votes, are you going to contest that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's not as if I think anybody's doing anything wrong. I think it's important for the voters to be able to make sure that they are accurate. And I would do that. I hope that other candidate would do it as well. And I would welcome it. Absolutely, I would ask for a recount because I think the public needs to know. And obviously, if I'm not successful, that doesn't stop me from doing what I'm doing. I've been doing this for years. I don't need to invent a way to be an activist for our children. I've always been part of that community as well.
Hey, well, listen, Mike, thanks a lot again for being with us. Good luck. We look forward to seeing you in November and having you on the show again. So let's get to the final. Let's get to the final of this, and let's talk about the gubernatorial race for the Democratic Party and what our projections are. Based on what we see, our projections are that Wes Moore is the Democratic nominee. Wes Moore is a Democratic nominee for the Democratic Party to face off Dan Cox in November. West has performed, I got to tell you, and I'm sure that the Francho and the Perez people are stunned. You know, when you look at the early voting numbers and you look at the in the polling numbers from yesterday, West, when you go to Western Maryland and you look at Frederick County, and you know, Perez did pretty well in Western Maryland, but you go over the bridge to Somerset County, that are traditionally red states, West finished first. Howard County, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and we're talking substantially different numbers. His early voting numbers were very, very good. His numbers from yesterday polling places, particularly in Prince George's County, he just blew them away in Prince George's County. So when you look at that, and you look at the fact that we have, so as you see the numbers now, West has 137,788 votes, or 36%. He's ahead of Perez by 9%. So let's take it down to 5% if they were to hold their percentages through the mail-in votes. And you're going to assume that the 480 some thousand votes that have to be counted statewide include gubernatorial candidates, although we know that some are going to go for the Republican candidate. So what's left for the Democratic candidates? So when we crunch the numbers and we look county by county, what the trend was, even in Francho's and Perez's home county of Montgomery County, Westmore performed very, very well. He performed well. And as I mentioned, in the outlying counties that are traditionally Republican, West performed well. But Baltimore County, where we know Baltimore County carried Larry Hogan into the governor's house, and I believe that it's going to carry Westmore into the November runoff with Dan Cox. Westmore, we projected here on 60 Minutes in Black America on the blackusa.news network that Westmore is the Democratic gubernatorial candidate for the state of Maryland. A proud moment, if you're in Maryland, for all Marylanders, for the opportunity to put front potentially only the third elected Black governor in this state. So thank you all for tuning in to this special edition. Tell your friends, if you're watching, to watch our rerun, be it on YouTube or blackusa.news or Be More News, if you want your friends to see where we are and where we went relative to the elections in the state of Maryland, so you don't have to wait for CNN or ABC News at 10 o'clock tonight. We've already given you a sense of where the elections are going to finish based on some very comprehensive statistical data number. Last night, we were 5-0 in our projections, and we just projected 5 more. I'd like to thank our production team, Dion, Leon, thank you so much for these numbers and for assisting us and working throughout the night to get them. And thanks for this special edition.